Saturday. Christmas comes early.
Unbelievable! Welcome to this incredible scene.
Bills.
To the end zone!
Chargers.
It's a touchdown!
An exclusive NFL game.
This is fantastic!
Live in primetime.
Wow!
Only on Peacock.
With a Christmas gift to their fans.
They're having some fun now.
Bills versus Chargers. Saturday, 7:30 Eastern. Exclusively on Peacock.
On the 8th of September 2022, Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II passed away at the age of 96 at Balmoral Castle in Scotland. As an owner, the Queen won over 1,000 races, including 4 of the British Classics. Only the Derby eluded her, and was the champion owner in 1954 and 1957. Her crowning racing moment was in 2013 when her filly Estimate won the Ascot Gold Cup. As a tribute to Her Majesty, I have spoken to 3 former guests of the show about their personal racing memories of the Queen. You will shortly hear the memories of Richard Pitman, the former National Hunt jockey and BBC TV racing presenter, Gay Kelleway, the first woman jockey to win a race at Royal Ascot, and David Hunter, the chief executive and clerk of the course at Fakenham racecourse. There has never been a British monarch with a passion for racing and breeding thoroughbreds of the stature of Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II. Richard, do you remember your first meeting with the Queen?
Yes, I do. Back in the mid-70s, there were parties given by the Queen Mother in the Royal Lodge in Windsor Park, which was her pad at the time. And they were a few trainers like Nicky Henderson and the jockeys of the time. And it would be, I don't know, 15 people. And the Queen Mother was hosting just a drinks and nibbles thing because she loved her racing so much and loved the people involved in it. And the first we were aware that the Queen was there was when there were all of a sudden 6 corgis running around your feet. And you'd look around and there was the Queen. No announcement. She just wandered in from a side room in a jumper and tweed skirt and was very relaxed and wasn't announced because it was her mother's party. You know, she was just another guest. So it was so informal and so lovely. And of course, she knew so much about the jumping and about everybody within it, that room, that it was just a really pleasant time. And the Queen Mother was all, not childlike, so happy that she got this group of people with her and her mother. And so therefore it was a really joyous occasion. And that happened quite a few times. I'm very proud and honoured to have met Her Majesty.
So did you ever meet her when you're in your TV days for the BBC?
No, but, well, yes, loosely. Peter Scudamore and I were asked to judge the best riding performance at the Aintree Grand National meeting. And I can't remember what year, it would have been 80-something. And everybody expected us to go for someone from the Grand National, but we decided Carrie Ford would get it because she rode the Fox Hunters winner that year. And I'm kind of struggling to remember what it was, but that doesn't matter. Anyway, for some reason, we couldn't make the presentation at the agreed time, not that day, later. Whatever catastrophe happened, it didn't happen. So the Queen agreed that she would present it at Buckingham Palace. The date was arranged. 12 of us turned up there to present the prize, Skew and myself and Carrie Ford. And I think she was still married at the time to Richard Ford and, just general few people. And we were in the balcony room, where they open up those great balcony doors and the Queen and everyone waves to the people below. And of course, there's always people there looking up at Buckingham Palace. And after I looked at all the paintings and things that were in that room, I thought, well, wouldn't it be nice to see what the view is like from the balcony looking down and into the Mall? And I'm just opening the doors to go out there when a large hand went on my shoulder and said, "Excuse me, sir, only the higher royal family are allowed out there." It was so embarrassing. Anyway, 2 minutes later, in walked the Queen into the room. And again, I have to stress just a dozen people, so relaxed, so poignant, and such a strong memory. And as you know, Stephen, my memory is shattered. I can't remember what day it is half the time. I said to the wife yesterday, "What are you doing here?" She said, "I'm married to you, you fool."
Well, you nearly did what Churchill did. You nearly stood on the balcony then, like the royal family.
Yeah.
What are your memories of the Queen?
My memories of the Queen is on a regular basis at Royal Ascot when I rode, of course, and of course when I had runners or when my dad had runners. She was always in the paddock in the 80s. I don't think she missed a race coming in the paddock during the 80s, and when we only had 4 days. We had 4 days racing, 6 races. So obviously, she only turned up the Tuesday to the Friday. So it was more exclusive, really, in those days. They didn't let so many people in the paddock like they do now. So you got very close to her. I didn't personally ever meet her, but when I rode a winner at Ascot back in 1987, Royal Ascot, I had a message from the Queen. I think Lord Porteous just sent it over to me at Ascot Heath. Her Majesty congratulates you on your highest achievement. My parents used to have, all the trainers used to get an invite to have lunch at Ascot Heath with the Queen Mother. So obviously the Queen didn't go on the Saturday, but the Queen Mother did. And she hosted a lunch with all the trainers, the winning trainers that week of the 4 days. And Father and Mother always ended up sat next to her because she loved Father because he was a jump jockey, and he was the only sort of jump trainer, flat trainer, that was in National Hunt. All the rest of the trainers were all flat trainers. So they got on tremendously well and knew all about the royal family, knew all about the family and knew about us kids. So, yeah, she was prominent in my lifetime, as so many, particularly in racing, and should be certainly sorely missed.
You must have felt pleased when you got a message. I mean, become the first woman jockey to win a race at Royal Ascot in 1987.
Yes, and it's an honour to actually do it when the Queen was alive, and during her monarchy. And it was a privilege. And I'm quite a big royalist anyway, so I think in racing we've all been hit quite hard because she's just such a predominant owner within our industry, and those beautiful colours she has, the stunning, and you always feel proud when you. I've got a lovely picture of beating one of her horses, actually, one of Ian Bording's, as a jockey, and he was behind me, and I felt a little bit ashamed to beat the Queen. You do, don't you? But you feel like you've achieved something, but also you feel a bit ashamed as well. It's kind of a mixed emotion when you used to beat one of the Queen's horses. Yeah,
because all the spectators have that sort of their second choice of a horse on, even if they'd had a bet, would be the Queen's horse, wouldn't it?
I think their first choice, used to talk to everybody. I mean, even when I went racing to Ascot, and evidently she had more horses in the last 2 years than she's ever had, in training and at the stud. I think they were hoping to hit some big races at Ascot because obviously she was, she's an elderly lady and you don't really know how long someone has at that sort of age. And they just wanted to bump up her interest because she just adored horse racing and she loved her horses. You only had to see her around horses. I mean, my head girl of 26 years, Liz Mullen, she looked after a filly of Her Royal Highness's, called Flight of Fancy. And Flight of Fancy was a very, very good filly. I think she was second in the Oaks. And when Her Majesty went to Sir Michael Stout's stable, Liz was there with the filly, and Her Majesty went to give Flight of Fancy a carrot, and wouldn't take it off Her Majesty. And this is how down to earth she was. She gave the carrot to Liz. And Liz, she said to Liz, well, she'll probably take it off you and not me. And of course she did. And Her Majesty laughed. So, I mean, she was just like very normal, very, very normal human being to be around. And as like so many of the royal trainers have said, you know, to have a one-to-one with her is like talking to anybody down the road.
Yeah, many people outside racing wouldn't realise how often she would come to Newmarket to visit her horses at the home of racing. Yeah,
she did a lot, actually. I think it all kept a bit hush-hush. But, you know, the odd time I used to see her on the heath, you know, I thought, I swear that's the Queen of it. And it was quite ironic, really, to see, surreal, really, when you she's on her own with a couple of her advisors and either Sir Michael Stout or John Gosden on the top of the heath. And we're sort of riding by and say, look, there's the Queen over there. With so many people queue up when you see now what's going on the TV, you know, people queuing up and herds of people. Whereas, you know, we were quite privileged in the racing to be so close to Her Majesty, you know.
David, what's your two memories, I believe, of meeting the Queen?
Absolutely. Hello, Stephen. Yeah, the first one was back in 1992 when I was a soldier, and I was an officer instructor at the Royal Military Academy, Sandhurst, and the platoon, my platoon of cadets, formed a company of cadets, and that company in 1992 became the Sovereign's Company, which is an honour that the one company wins by being the top company in the intake of cadets for that year. And my platoon was part of the company that won that, and it's won on a number of, you know, competitions and achievements that happened throughout the year. And at the end of it, being in then the Sovereign's Company, which one was able to call oneself for the last term, the Queen came and met all of the cadets. She was actually taking the Sovereign's Parade, the passing out parade for the cadets, I think either later that day or that morning. And but she came and met all of the cadets, met the directing staff, and I have, along with other memorable military photographs, I have a lovely photograph of myself sitting on the front row, 4 chairs to the right of Her Majesty in 1992. So that was my first time of meeting her. And then the second time was in 2008. I was then, as well as running Fakenham racecourse, I was the manager for the British Paralympic equestrian team. And in October 2008, we'd recently come back from the Paralympic Games in Beijing, and the Queen very graciously gave a reception at Buckingham Palace for all members of the British Paralympic team, athletes, support staff, and everything. So I was there with my very successful dressage team of riders and support staff, and we were in a sort of huddle. And, you know, in due course, she got around to us, and you could certainly see her face lifted, that fantastic smile when she realised that she was now speaking with the equestrian team, with all of us who had a common interest and knowledge of horses. So I was introduced to her first of all, had a chat, and then introduced her personally to all of the members of the team there, and I like to think she stayed with us a little bit longer, possibly than some of the other equally successful sports teams that were. It was a fantastic occasion, right in the centre of Buckingham Palace. Those are my memories of meeting Her Majesty, and they are ones that I cherish and will never forget.
Well, thanks for those interesting stories, David. What did the Queen mean to you?
Well, a huge amount. I mean, I spent 10 years as a soldier. I was commissioned as an officer in 1983. I have my signed commission paper at home, signed by Her Majesty. So, you know, as an officer or as a soldier, you serve the Queen. So I served the Queen personally for 10 years, and she is a tremendous person, as all the members of the royal family are, particularly close links to the armed forces. And then, having left the army, I've been very fortunate to be in equestrianism, first of all in sort of mainstream equestrianism, and then for the last 25 years in racing. And, you know, she has been a tremendous asset to racing. At Fakenham, she was the patron at Fakenham from within days of her ascension to the throne until 1st of January 2000. And then she gave up her patronage and the Prince of Wales took it on. So currently, the King is our patron at Fakenham, which is a lovely thing to have. But she was passionate about her racing. And, some people might not remember, but when her mother, the Queen Mother, was alive, national hunt racing was her real thing. And the Queen didn't have horses in training to do with national hunt racing. She was purely on the flat, and it was the Queen Mother who had the jumping interests. I was very fortunate to meet the Queen Mother and have a very jolly private lunch of 13 of us here once at Fakenham. But when the Queen Mother died, the Queen then took on the interest and the sort of mantle of her mother's national hunter interest. And here in Norfolk and at Fakenham, we're very close to Sandringham. Where I live, even closer. We're the next door village virtually. And so, Sandringham with the Royal Stud there. It is quite often that we have horses that run here that might have started their lives having been bred at the Royal Stud anyway. So it's a great link to us here in Norfolk and to Norfolk racing, but it's a huge, huge link to racing in this country and racing internationally.
What did the Queen mean to you, Richard?
Oh, she was everything. She was such a strong figurehead, and she had been on the throne since I was 10. So I watched the coronation then because it was such a big occasion. And I've been such a follower of her since, because everything she's done has been good. And she's had some trials and tribulations, but she's been there for us. But more than that, her love of the horses. You've only got to see her pat a horse down the nose, on the muzzle, down the neck. She loves her horses, and she knew her horses. I mean, she knows her breeding very well. Charles, can't remember his second name, at Loo near Whitney here, used to have the jumping horses for her and the Queen Mother, because she did have an interest in the Queen Mother's jumping horses. And they'd go there, and I can remember her, I was over for one reason or another, and it was raining, but she still insisted on going out into the fields. And Charles Ratcliffe was his name, sorry. Anyway, she insisted with the Queen Mother going into the fields to see the young horses. And it was pouring rain. It wasn't a question of let's go down in a Range Rover and look out the window. She went down there, patted them, looked at them, studied their legs. And there was a great photograph of her walking back, absolutely drenched, but loving it, because she loved to be in amongst it. So her love of horses was superb. Her knowledge was as good as anyone's, not just her advisors around her own personal knowledge of the horses and understanding of horse racing.
So in conclusion, how important, Gay, do you think the Queen has been to British racing and world racing?
I think the Queen has been, I couldn't really put into words how big she's been in racing. It's bigger than words themselves. She was an amazing lady. You only had to see her around horses, how much she adored them, and the excitement she got from watching her. The only time I ever really saw the Queen really smile and laugh was when she was round her horses, and when she was racing. You could see her every detail of looking at a horse and what she knew her pedigree so well, inside out, evidently. But it will be such a massive loss for us, such a massive loss. And Royal Ascot, I promise you, will never be the same without her. I'm sure the royal family will continue to have interest in horse racing, but it won't be as big and won't be as popular with them as it would have been with the Queen.
How important was the Queen to British racing and to the world of racing?
Very important indeed. To be absolutely honest, she is she'd be the most famous lady in the world. And I think in hand in that, if people said, what is the Queen's greatest sporting interest? I think everybody around the world, and certainly this country, would have said horse racing. And I think she enabled horse racing to to be available to everybody, and did it in such a quiet and unassuming way, and so passionate about it, and hugely knowledgeable by all accounts of breeding lines and what she wanted. Took a very personal interest in the Royal Stud at Sandringham. The relationship with the stud manager and members of the staff there, I believe, was very, very close indeed. And a huge interest in horses. And, you can just see that she has an affinity with, or had an affinity with horses, whatever shape, size or form, from, fell ponies to thoroughbreds. She understood horses. She was a horsewoman through and through. And horses and ponies responded to that. And racing people and horse people responded to that as well in such a lovely way. So she'll be hugely missed, but she'll be massively remembered.
And how important was the Queen to British and world racing?
Well, how could you put a price on that? There's no monetary price you could put on that. It was just so important. The pomp and ceremony of Royal Ascot is just fantastic. But also, she's had runners in a lot of places around the world, including some time ago in Ireland, Northern Ireland. She has been such a supporter of the game. And of course, she's had one or two nice horses given to her as presents. Lots of heads of states give presents to other heads of states. And I can't remember the breeding, but there is a line that she has at Sandringham Stud from a yearling or 2-year-old that Sheikh Mohammed gave her. So, it's been fascinating worldwide. But that raises the question, Stephen, who is going to take over? Who will... King Charles will have inherited Sandringham and the horses, but he may delegate that side of it to, I would hope, Princess Anne, although she's very busy, but she would make room for that. I don't know. But you've got to remember, King Charles rode steeplechasing, and he rode very well. Didn't ride a winner, but he rode a good horse that he owned with Nick Gaisley, the trainer in Lambourne, called Alibar, placed many times. And then when Alibar got a leg or stopped, they bought a horse from John Edwards, a little small horse with a small neck. And it was the wrong horse for him totally. And Philip Blackie used to ride it. He said to me, he'll get a few shocks off this one because he was small. And if he made a mistake, there was no neck in front of you. And sure enough, he got rid of King Charles a couple of times, and they didn't last the partnership because the horse wasn't right. So, there have been a lot of royal patronage in racing, and King Charles does know what he's looking at, as does the Queen Consort Camilla. She was a great hunting lady with the Beaufort, that, as was Prince Charles. And that takes some jumping down there, I can tell you. So they have the hands-on from the top. Whether they have the time to get hands-on with the stud remains to be seen.
And a very hard act to follow.
Yeah, so indeed.
Well, thank you very much, Richard, for sharing your memories of the Queen.
It's a pleasure, and it's been a tearful time, and will be on Monday. But we will all go, Stephen.
Thank you.
Sports Social Podcast Network.